Hello, in this video, we're going to be talking about the general information for plants. Let's not waste any of your time. Let's get right to it. Now, as we start our process of Chapter 30, Plant Structure and Functions, this may be the chapter that maybe you know the most about. If you're certainly if you're a gardener or just know a lot about plants, maybe from for whatever the situation might have been, but certainly most of us are pretty familiar with the parts of a plant, so that will be helpful overall. But each of these parts of the plant that you see on the screen here, the stem and the leaves and the roots and the flowers, they all have their own videos, so we won't go too much in depth here. But just general information, roots we understand. You got your two major types, fibrous and tap. And when we talk about roots, we'll not only talk about those two, but we'll talk about some other special cases. They're not so much they're called roots, but there are other things that are advantageous for the plants, like the aerial roots and the epiphytic roots and things like that. When we talk in the flowers, not only we will talk the parts, we'll speak about the reproductive aspects as well, and of course leaves will break down a different level of tissues, and of course the reproductive stuff we'll bring in the fruit and talk about that. We'll also, and again, the tissues have their own video as well. It's the next video. But we'll talk about dermal tissue. Dermal tissue, just like with your skin, is that outer layer. And of course, if it's a green plant, it's just that fleshy skin that you can feel. And then if it's a tree, an extension of that would be obviously the bark. But that would not be the true dermal. The dermal would be underneath the bark, the first woody part underneath there. Vascular tissue, we're going to spend a bunch of time talking about vascular tissue. Vascular tissue you can relate to, just like with dermal tissue in your skin. Vascular tissue you can relate to your blood vessels. Vascular tissue is the tissue layers that helps move around the needed resources. If it's phloem, it moves the sugars and things associated with photosynthesis. If it's xylem, then it moves water and other solutes around the plant that are needed. Ground tissue, the best body example for ground tissue is, think about your arm or your leg, whichever one you want to. The skin of your arm or leg would be the dermal tissue. The bone inside, because that's where the vascular tissue is located, it would be similar to in a ground tissue example where the vascular tissue is. It's in the center, and in the ground tissue would be the muscle underneath the skin and around the bone. The ground tissue makes up a majority of the area. So if you think about your leg muscle, your thigh muscle, big muscle, hopefully, you've got the skin, dermal. You've got the muscle, which would be the ground tissue, the big bulk of that, both the muscle in the front, muscle in the back, around the bone, and of course the bone would be the location of the vascular tissue, as you can see in the diagram below me there. Okay, some other things we want to talk about for general information for plants is their life cycles. Now, life cycles not so much, because when we talked about meiosis, we dealt with that alternating generation life cycle going from diploid to haploid. We're not talking about that here. We're talking about length of time the plant is active and viable. But if you're a gardener, you're well familiar with these terms. My wife could tell you all about these things. She's a gardener. She's got gardens all over the place. But if it's an annual, which we have to go to the nurseries every year to get the annuals that she has out there. But those are plants that are just good for the 1 year. Everything happens in one year's time. Perennials are plants that last for multiple growing seasons, and in biennials, 2 years to complete their life cycle. And that's usually a situation where they grow the first year and then fruit the second year, something like that. Well, that is our video over general information for plants. When we come back together next time, we're going to talk about tissues of a plant. We'll see you then.